Whoa. If you've ever seen this channel before, there's a decent chance you've heard me go on and on about the I-Blend Emperor. What I think is the farthest flying distance driver out there, at least 12 speed, because it takes the normal Emperor, like in this S-Blend, which is very similar, if not the same, as an old Destroyer mold from Innova, because Infinite Discs, my main sponsor, great retailer, snag all your discs there, all their discs are made by Innova, and the I-Blend just kind of adds a decent amount of dome, always a little bit more understability, and almost always 20 to 50 feet more distance. But not everybody can throw a Destroyer, an Emperor, a fast 12 speed, and so Infinite is collabing with Innova, even though Innova already makes all their discs, to put an Innova mold out, the Wraith, one of the most popular distance drivers, especially if you can't throw a Destroyer. Innova claims that the Wraith flies for amateurs like the Destroyer flies for pros, and they're putting it out in the I-Blend plastic. Probably my favorite plastic out there, because it not only has those flight benefits, but it's also quite grippy while still having enough stiffness to be very comfortable to throw. It's just super tacky, you can really dig into the flight plate. And I-Blend is Infinite's proprietary plastic. So out right now are the I-Blend Wraiths. It also helps that I-Blend is almost always cheaper than a stock Star or S-Blend disc. So I want to see if the I-Blend-ness holds up with the Wraiths like it does for the Emperors. And already I'm feeling a difference and seeing a difference from what I would have expected an I-Blend Wraith to be, just based off of how I-Blend Emperors are. And I know it's gonna be a question in a lot of your heads. What is the I-Blend plastic? I don't 100% know. They don't put out, hey, this is the ratios of what this plastic is. It feels to me somewhere between Star and EcoStar plastic. EcoStar, being Innova's recycled plastic, also has the tendency to make this get flippier and go really far, but even more so than I-Blend typically. So this feels like it's partially recycled Star plastic, partially new Star plastic, maybe Pro mixed in there for grip. Honestly, I don't really know. Those are just kind of my thoughts, and I've had a lot of experience with it. But today we're gonna play a 9-hole loop here at Adams Hollow. Some shorter holes in the 250 range, but most holes being between 320 and a couple 500-foot par 4s. Star Wraith versus I-Blend Wraith, and I did also bring out one disc to compare with it, which I think could be very close if the I-Blend Wraith has the qualities that the I-Blend Emperor does compared to the S-Blend. Hole 1, 317 feet in the mystery disc that we're gonna be throwing all 3 of these discs on all 9 of these holes for a CTP battle. I-Blend Wraith always going first, and the I-Blend Wraith we're going to score. But through these 9 holes, if I can't shoot at least 3 down with just the Wraith, I'll be doing a giveaway with it, and we're not gonna put it in the bounty bin. We're actually just gonna do a straight up giveaway over on Instagram, and we'll also do that if it loses the CTP battle. It can tie last, it just can't outright lose, but we're comparing the Grace from Latitude 64, one of the farther flying 11 speeds ever created, and I do have a 10 speed that I think is an 11 speed that we'll throw on a couple holes as well for a comparison, because I think some people would ask, depending on how this flies. We'll look at the profiles after this hole, but I think hole 1 is gonna be a little forehand to get started. Throw it at those trees, we got a little tailwind. The hand feel does feel like a disc you'd wanna throw. Oh, that's flippier than I expected. Oh my gosh, that was straight. That's got that I-Blend flight. Okay, here's the Star Wraith. The flight numbers of the Wraith are 11.5, -1.3. If anything, my guess is the glide and fade might get adjusted. Oh, that's a pretty decent difference. Grace. Oh, wow. I felt in my hand the lower parting line, and I threw it accordingly. Not the best first shots with that disc. Good thing we can unleash on hole 2, because it's a 515-foot par 4, and you need something to flip up on that shot, which this Wraith might be perfect for. It didn't feel, based on the profile, like it was gonna have as much I-Blend in it as it feels like it does. In terms of the flight, obviously the plastic's I-Blend. Well, the I-Blend I think had more potential, it was better thrown, but the S-Blend is, or the Star, excuse me, is closer to the basket. So 1 CTP for the Star, nothing for the I-Blend, but let's see how the putter's feeling in the morning here. Not bad. Let's go. First ever shot with the I-Blend Wraith, first ever birdie with the I-Blend Wraith. We're gonna save that last 10 speed that I personally think is more of an 11 speed, maybe 10.5, for hole 18, up a mountain, 500 feet. And I'll have a much better idea on this I-Blend by then. Already that first shot showed me a lot, because this is the profile. Normally, the I-Blend Emperor has a bit more dome, even though it's a very similar shape. The parting line may be slightly lower in the I-Blend Emperor compared to the S-Blend, but typically I-Blend and S-Blend start out similarly overstable, with the I-Blend being a tick more understable. I-Blend Wraith is not domier than the normal Wraith. And I thought that was pretty interesting because it's not like the Wraith is a disc that can't be domey. If you've seen Halo Wraiths, double G Halo Wraiths, they are very domey Wraiths. Maybe it's just the way that the plastic works in the mold. And the I-Blend Wraith is pretty much as flat, maybe even a bit flatter than the stock Star Wraith, but then the parting line feels a little lower. It feels honestly a little better on the forehand just because it's a little flatter, and I don't think it's gonna lose a lot of glide because there's the lack of dome, just because of the plastic. Hole 2, 517 feet. We're gonna do a first shot CTP here instead of a second shot CTP, because hopefully all of them are within little flick up range. On a little bit of hyzer with the I-Blend and let it stand up. I think I'm gonna have to throw these other ones flat to turn. Sun's peeking up. Hopefully my power's peeking up too. Wow, okay. It's a solid rip, but that is, yeah, that's down by that second tree, which is typically where I'll land with my distance drivers. That was flippier than I expected. I thought I released it on too much hyzer too low. Did not. Wraith next. Yeah, that flight is, if a Wraith is too beefy for you, like a stock Star one, that new I-Blend is money. The Grace. Just based on those throws, I think we can learn a lot. Pretty similar distance to the I-Blend, maybe a touch shorter, but it seems that a stock Star Wraith up here in Denver, where I'm reviewing these and where I live right now, it is a little bit more overstable than it would be at sea level. I've thrown that same Wraith down at sea level this year, and it kind of pops up here. You throw it flat, it kind of stays flat and then gets some fade. The Grace seems to be one notch below that disc in stability, or maybe only just a little notch up in glide, because it had a very similar flight. It just seemed to want to hold the angle more and stay in the air a little longer. Wasn't fighting to the ground like the Wraith does. And the I-Blend Wraith, actually the worst shot, but I think it may have gotten the furthest distance, and it flipped from a decent hyzer up and turned. That's gonna be a pretty fun disc, especially if you have baby hands like me, and 12 speeds can feel a little big. That being said, it and the Grace are right next to each other, and the Wraith climbed over the hill, so the Star Wraith is actually the closest to the basket. 2 CTPs for the Star, nothing for these other two. When I set the line at 3 down, I did kind of forget that I have 3 par 4s that should all be birdies. So I'm gonna adjust the line up to 4 down. See how this does on a touch forehand, maybe about 180 feet away. Sit down. Woo! Uh-oh. Oh, that's just a par, it's not even a bogey. I'm grateful that for the review here, holes 5, 7, and 9 are all going to be the big distance shots. 425 foot par 3, 570 foot par 4, 500 foot par 4 up the mound. This hole is only about 295 feet right there. And I like this because hole 1, I always like to throw flat to flex forehand, and that held over with the I-Blend Wraith. And so here, getting to throw a hyzer forehand should be nice because I can leave it a little wider, trusting that it's gonna glide back to the right, but it's also gonna pop up a little bit and give me easier distance. I believe, based on what I've already seen. These ones, I'll have to throw a little bit more flat or a little bit harder to get a similar flight. Hit and sit. It hit, it didn't sit. I didn't leave that left enough. I had said it was gonna glide back right because of the glide. Didn't believe it, I guess. Oh, wow, that's shorted. I think the Grace has this one on lock almost. I felt like I threw those almost identical, and that is a pretty big difference in flight. Pretty embarrassing for my second shot, but I'm glad I did that because I saw the result. A little bit flatter. It's gonna counter skip off the hill and be good. Interestingly, I did try to beef up a bit on how I was throwing the Wraith and Grace. Wraith, I guess not so much, but the Grace I did, and it still wound up a little short. Even shorter than the I-Blend, which skipped in between these 2 trees here, and is gonna be down the hill. The Grace is about 25, the I-Blend very close, but just a bit farther because it did skip down the hill. But that little bit of extra pushiness and extra distance that I see in my I-Blend Emperors, so far I've seen in every single shot with this I-Blend Wraith. None of them have been how I've wanted to throw it yet. I'm still obviously learning the disc, but they all have seemed to push farther than they should have when I've thrown these after them with a similar amount of power, and they're not going as far. Interesting window here. $327 feet. This could be another forehand, and I think most of the next holes will be backhands, so I'm gonna do it. I wanna try this backhand up the middle gap, but I think this is where the extra distance of this is really gonna be exemplified, because if I give it the right height, I can throw it slight hyzer to flat, and it should ride all the way to the basket, and then these are gonna have to be a little bit of flex. I-Blend, you still have 0 CTPs. This is not looking good for me keeping it. Money. Oh, I thought it was gonna go in for a second, but I think that about every shot that's like within a 30 feet radius of the basket. Star Wraith. This is why I'm glad that I'm reviewing this compared to one another, because my juice today is not there. And so I'm having to force these flex shots, which typically I would throw a hyzer with the Star Wraith to get there, but I'm just not throwing very far. But even how I'm throwing today, we can see the difference between all of it. And it's pretty stark. I thought that was way too much angle, but it's a similar result. There's some more power. Use that front leg. Oh, that flash changed too. I do think the I-Blend has its first CTP though, and that's what I need, because this disc is pretty freaking sick. I really, based on the profile, I was like, okay, cool, it's just gonna feel like another plastic of Star Wraith. This is making me even more a believer in the I-Blend plastic that is doing something to the discs to make them go a little farther and glide a little more. If someone is way smarter than me and has the means and the know-how to do like a test and figure out what it is, I would love to know. I would really love to know. Okay, this is extra surprising. I put more flex and I felt like more power into the Wraith and the Grace, and the I-Blend Wraith is the closest and went the farthest, and they are all max weight. 173, 175, 173, 175. It says 173 in there. Hopefully, you probably can't see it. We got 425 feet now, and I'm starting to really enjoy this thing. I feel like I can trust the level of hyzer that I think I need to put on it, especially because my preliminary flight numbers for this disc are 11.6, -1, 2, which I believe are the Grace's flight numbers. So maybe give it an extra half tick of stability, 11.6, -1.52. But I say 2 instead of 3 because with the extra glide, it just fades softer. It'll push right a lot if you give it hyzer and height, because the glide will help push it to the right or to the left on your shots, but it doesn't push as fast or as dumpy as an overstable disc would. But the glide is pretty real, even though the profile is less domey than the Star one. Because of the extra bit of turn, lack of fade, and glide, a lot of people have likened my I-Blend Emperors or I-Blend Emperors in general to a beat-in Emperor, and I think that's pretty similar with this Wraith. If you have an older Wraith, or maybe even a Pro Wraith, maybe this is more overstable than that, I don't have one to compare, but if you have an older Wraith that's been beat in, this might be stock like that out of the box. I-Blend does beat in faster than Star, but not too fast. Jeez. Okay, I didn't see the skip, so it could have gotten close, it could have stayed there. I think the disc did compensate for me. It pushes, man. Wraith, Star. There we go. That's a poppy throw compared to the rest of them today. That I saw the skip. That might be closer than the I-Blend. Grace, same shot as that, money. Oh, okay, the pop's coming back, which is very good for these 2 par 4s. And that, I think, showed a pretty decent difference of the Wraith and Grace. Wraith had a little less angle than the Grace did, but I put the I-Blend Wraith on that angle that both of those had. I don't think it's coming out of it until the last 10% of the flight, versus for the Wraith, maybe the last 35, and the Grace, maybe the last quarter. So they gotta fade. I think the Wraith would just get to flat. Okay, interesting. Star Wraith is short. Grace, a little closer to pin high. And I don't see the I-Blend Wraith. Okay, it's just about as short as the Star. That makes sense. That does mean Star is another CTP though. 3, 1, 1. Gotta look. Oh, Less talking, more throwing. For this hole, a 250-foot ace run. Then on a nice 570-foot par 4, which I think I'm just gonna try to throw up the middle, see which one gets closest on the first shot, and then just throw the Wraith for the second. Hole 17 is a 310-foot little tunnel shot that I'm gonna throw a right hyzer. You'll see all those, and then we'll reconvene on hole 18 for the last hole with the last disc. Hopefully, a couple more birdies in my back pocket. Don't look at my butt. Too glidey. That with the Wraith would have been great. Oh, I said I'd shut up. Whoops, sorry. Not shutting up. Okay, last hole. The last disc we're gonna be throwing is the Fission Trail. I think it's not quite as fast as these other discs. So the trail being a 10 speed, 10.5 speed, probably pretty accurate. I was really surprised that this Wraith was closer to the basket on hole 16, even though these two went farther by a little bit. This one had the right shape and it just got lefter, which is closer. Hole 18, Fission Trail, added on to these bad boys. The Wraith does now have 3 CTPs to the Grace's 2 to 4. And as long as I don't bogey here, I'm at my 4 down. Sick disc. Snag one of these. They drop today on infinitedisc.com. I'll leave them linked right down below, as well as the other discs that we talked about in this video and my signature discs, because why not? That being said, 500 feet up the hill. Gonna hold turn for a while, give it the height. Let's get an eagle. That's not the height, but that's actually gonna be decent for this disc. Just missed that rock. Missed the rock! I hit the rock. It's the first time I ever hit the rock. Should be easy pitch up for bird. This Wraith, I can trust it a little higher because of the stability, which I do like. Wow, too much. Wow, wow, wow. Good distance. Grace. There it is. Get over stable, come on. Come on, come on. The I-Blend Wraith went so far in such a low line. And the trail. Honestly, I think pretty similar flight, just not quite as fast as that Wraith. A little domier is the trail versus the Wraith. And I think that's what would have happened to the Wraith if I would have thrown it at that same height instead of as low as I did. So that might honestly be the best comparison. This is the Wraith version of a Fission Trail, which I know is a pretty positive comparison, but I kept thinking neutron trail, and then every time I throw the Wraith, it would fly more like that flippier one. So Fission Trail and I-Blend, relatively similar. I am running out of time, so we're gonna chuck this up here for a birdie. You know what? I have the strokes. I'll run it for the eagle. You gotta. But I do think with this I-Blend Wraith, there's a reason that the I-Blend Emperors, although they're my favorite throwers, as someone who throws, when I'm hitting my timing right, upper 400s, 480, 490, something like that. I have touched 500 before, especially with an I-Blend Emperor, but more typically middle 400s, 440, 465. I think there's a reason that if you're looking at like Nick Crush, Blitz Disc Golf, the guys who throw in the 600s and plus, they're not really throwing I-Blend Emperors, they're more throwing Luster Emperors or Beat-In Star Emperors, because they handle torque a little better. That's why I do think that this is the farthest flying Wraith for 90+% of people, this will be the farthest flying Wraith. I think for sure it's the farthest flying Wraith for me. It's very close to this though. I was surprised at how much distance this got being more stable. The trail just beyond it, which means I think this would have been farther if it didn't hit the rock. And the Grace just next to this Wraith means they either tie or the Wraith is up 1, which the Wraith actually looks slightly closer than the Grace. The trail technically has a CTP, but it's not in the battle. So Wraith gets its 4th, and I throw it in and walk off a hero. I'm counting that as a par. I'm not walking back up that hill. So I think if you throw a lot faster than me, this will be very flippy for you. It is a good level of flip for me, and if you throw slower than me, this will be a pretty bomber distance driver for you. You might have to flex it a little bit, but it'll be more forgiving because there's more glide. I think my official flight numbers will be 11.6, -1.52. It does fade if you give it time. It gets a really good distance, but it does hyzer flip even up here in Denver. So I think a lot of people are gonna be pretty happy with this Wraith. One of my favorite feeling plastics, and now one of the best flying Wraiths. Thanks so much for watching this video. Got a lot of cool stuff planned for this week and beyond. But the reason I'm up here at the butt crack of dawn is because this week's pretty full with filming with some pretty cool people. The first of those videos likely coming out tomorrow. Subscribe, I'll see you then. If you wanna watch my most recent review, F9 versus Function, battle of the really flippy boys. I'll see you there. Have a good day. Peace.